speaking more of unionization and about workers coming together to support a minimum wage and a living wage and a working wage where people could actually live.
Have,
And this showed up in my
have you watched?
newsletter. Oh no, go ahead, Bree.
Have you watched on Netflix Love, Death and Robots yet?
No.
There's a scene in it. There's a whole episode about a particular color of blue, right? And it reminds me of the blue that is entirely mattbruening.com. What is that? You know?
Yeah, that is what I would call a minimalist logo, to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, they give no fucks at Amazon is
Yeah.
absolutely correct, Nicole. It's cool to see everybody tweet. You know, some people on Twitch, some people on YouTube.
Zima blue. That's what it is.
Oh, okay, yeah, Zima.
Zima blue.
I remember Zima. I went to college when Zima was a thing, and Mix over in
Like
Hinkle's chat would bust on me for that because he calls me an old boomer all the time. So,
yeah.
all right. When McDonald's came to Denmark, and it's a really amazing piece that he wrote, and that's why I'm including it because I don't usually include Matt Bruenig stuff. I do think that he does some excellent work. It's just not typically what I feature. But when I saw this article and about how people come together, it made me think a lot about the General Strike Summit and what the Fred Hampton leftists are doing over there. And it made me
Yeah.
think about the, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on, the truck drivers in Australia and the farmers in India, and how all these different groups had to come together to make something happen. And it's not going to happen from one labor sector at a time. And I wanted to go through this article because it was really remarkable. And again, I'm going to drop all the links in the chat afterwards. And of course, if you're in the Discord, you can find all these links if you go to the Leftist.today or the Substack thread, or gosh, I don't even know where you could find this article on. You could probably just look at Matt Bruenig and find it there, and it'll take you the link to the Substack that has it. And again, I'll put it in the show notes. So every few months, a prominent person or publication points out that McDonald's workers in Denmark get that $22 per hour, 6 weeks of vacation and sick pay. And that, by the way, the price of a burger there is like 50 cents more, maybe, or 30 cents more than it is here. It might not even be that much. It might even be 10 cents. It's negligible. They can afford to do this. They choose not to. So again, every few months, a prominent person points it out, but what they don't point out, okay, this compensation comes on top of the general slate of social benefits in Denmark, which includes child allowances, health care, child care, paid leave, retirement, and education through college, and other things. Wow, that sounds like an agenda that I could 100% get behind. Damn, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's...
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it sounds perfect. Can we move?
I think we're in the wrong country. I think we need to start learning Danish.
Yep. Getting on it. Duolingo. Let's. I'm on it.
What is the B word? I don't know who had that whole B word. Oh, that was mixed. Oh, the bud thing. Okay, I was wondering that. Okay, bye, Nicole. Aw. Wait. Okay. Were you going goodbye? Okay. Nicole's on YouTube. Sorry, guys. Everybody else is hanging out on Twitch tonight, which is awesome. And this is going, I think, onto Odyssey, but I don't know if it's going live. I think it's just recording the stream onto Odyssey, and I'll have to figure out how to actually post it to my Odyssey page as well.
Right.
So again, in these discussions, relatively little is said about how all of this came to be, and it's sad because it's a really good story, and because the story provides a good window into why Nordic labor markets are the way they are. And it gives a little bit of history, and I'm sure, again, this is a very high level this thing, and you can see there that he's got references and links. McDonald's opened its first store in Denmark in 1981, and at that point, it was operating in over 20 countries and had successfully avoided unions in all but one, Sweden. again, Scandinavia. So when they arrived in Denmark, the labor market was governed by a set of sectoral labor agreements that established the wages and conditions for all the workers in a given sector. Under the prevailing norms, McDonald's should have adhered to the hotel and restaurant union agreement, but they didn't have to do so legally speaking. The union agreement is not binding on sector employees in the same way that a contract is. You can't sue a company for ignoring it. It's strictly voluntary. So McDonald's decided not to follow the union agreement and thus set up its own pay levels and work rules instead. This was a departure not just from what Danish companies did, but from what other similar foreign companies did. So, for example, Burger King, which is identical to McDonald's in all relevant respects, decided to follow the union agreement when it came to Denmark a few years earlier. So naturally, this decision from McDonald's drew the attention of the Danish labor movement. And according to press reports, the struggle to get McDonald's to follow the Hotel and Restaurant Workers Agreement began in 1982, but the efforts were very slow at first. McDonald's maintained that it had a principled position against unions and negotiations, and had press overtures were unable to move them off that position. But in late 1988 and early 1989, the unions decided enough was enough and called sympathy strikes in adjacent industries in order to cripple McDonald's operations. 16 different sector unions participated in the sympathy strikes. That is remarkable, and I love this. This got me like so excited. Dock workers refused to unload containers that had McDonald's equipment in them. Printers refused to supply printed materials to the stores, such as menus and cups. Construction workers refused to build McDonald's stores and even stopped construction on one that was already in progress but not yet finished. The typographers union refused to place McDonald's ads in publications, which eliminated the company's print advertisement presence. Truckers, my favorite guys, the truckers. I love those guys. We need to support the truckers. We need to get the truckers paid well. We need to get the truckers better living, working conditions. Love the truckers. Appreciate the hell out of them.
Yep.
Truckers refused to deliver food and beer to McDonald's. Food and beverage workers that worked at facilities that prepared food for the stores refused to work on McDonald's products. Everybody got together. Long ago, mostly though, yeah, but no, not so long ago in Scandinavia. This continues to happen, but this is a blueprint. In addition to wreaking havoc on McDonald's supply chains, the unions engaged in picketing and leaflet campaigns in front of McDonald's locations, urging consumers to boycott the company. So there was a mass campaign happening. All right, and you can see the pictures of the people out in front, which is really cool. Well, McDonald's in Denmark sells beer, McBeer. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They sell it in France too. I definitely.
Yeah, that sounds like a good. That's a great combination.
I definitely ordered a McBeer. No, it's not like generic beer. You could order like a Heineken. You know, like they sell them by the can, or they can do that there. Yeah, it makes money. So why not? So once the sympathy strike got going, McDonald's folded pretty quickly and decided to start following the hotel and restaurant agreement in 1989. This is why McDonald's workers in Denmark are paid $22 an hour. And he says he brings this up.
Real interesting take.
Right? Because people say a lot of things about the economies of Nordic countries and why they're so much more equal to ours. But in this discussion, certainly the presence of unions or sector bargaining comes up, but rarely do you get a discussion of just how radically powerful and organized the Nordic unions are and have been. If you didn't know better, you would think the Nordic labor market is the way it is because all the workers and employees came together and agreed that their system is better for everyone. And while it's true, of course, that on a day-to-day basis, labor relations in the countries are peaceful, lurking behind that peace is often a credible threat that the unions will crush an employer that steps out of line, not just by striking at one site or company, but by striking at every single thing the company touches. That is how labor exercises power. Now, like Invalid said, this was not years ago, and yes, the U.S. has a history of solidarity strikes like this. Exactly. So this is doable. We saw this mostly in Finland in 2019, most recently in Finland in 2019, when the Postal Service decided to cut the pay of 700 package handlers, and the unions responded by striking airlines, ferries, buses, trains, and ports. In the aftermath of these strikes, the pay cuts were reversed and the prime minister of the country resigned. I remember this. This was not long ago at all. Again, when I bring this up, some people respond by saying that these kind of strikes are illegal in the U.S. And this is true and a worthwhile bit of information. Yeah. Yep. But insofar as it is meant to imply that the different legal environment is what accounts for labor radicalism, this obviously has things backwards. The laws aren't driving the labor radicalism, but rather the labor radicalism is driving the laws. And that's how it should be happening here. And here's another recent example, this time from Finland in 2018. There, the conservative government was preparing to pass a law that would make it easier for employers with 20 or fewer employees to fire their workers. Stated purpose was to stimulate hiring by making it easier to fire and thus less risky to hire, the usual stuff. Again, Finnish labor movement did not like this idea and called a massive political strike that sidelined workers in a bunch of different sectors. In response to the strike wave, the government changed the bill so it only applied to employers with 10 or fewer employees. The strikes continued and they changed the bill again, this time so it just stated generally that the courts should consider an employer's size when considering wrongful dismissal cases. And guess what? This was acceptable to the unions, since according to them at least, Finnish courts already do this, and so the bill was basically moot. So they stopped striking. One can only imagine what would happen if the Finnish government tried to ban sympathy strikes in the same way that the U.S. government has here. If we were ever going to go to Nordic levels of equality, it's really hard to imagine doing it without building a similarly powerful labor movement. You can certainly get some of the way there, such as by copying certain welfare programs, but without the unions, you'll always be missing a key piece. And while legal and policy reforms can help build the labor movement some, the power of organized labor is not ultimately rooted in the state, but rather in the ability to halt production and wreak havoc even when the state is aligned against it. Yeah, McDonald's doesn't pay Danes high wages because of a statutory wage floor or even because the state stepped in to enforce a collective bargaining agreement. They pay high wages because back in the 80s, Danish unions flipped the switch and turned the whole business off, and McDonald's doesn't want to find out whether they would do it again. This is where we need to get to. Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah.
Yep.
This might be my favorite article of the week. And
yeah, this was good.
Yeah, dude.
I liked it. I mean, the thing I like about it is, like, you know, I wasn't aware of like sympathy strikes like that because they don't happen here.
Well, again, apparently they've been made illegal because somebody recognized how powerful it could become and realized that you could shut down an entire industry.
Oh, for sure. Everything. The entire country.